You not only have been widowed once, you were widowed twice.
Yes.
And you went through the online dating experience through all that and managed to bring a good attitude and make it work. Thank you so much for joining us today on Second Act TV. I'm so happy to introduce you to our guest today, author and widely acclaimed journalist Francine Russo. Francine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, it's such a pleasure. And you're talking about my favorite subject, which is love.
Well, you have become an expert on finding love after 50, which is the huge topic here on Second Act. Francine is the author right here of Love After 50: How to Find It, Enjoy It, and Keep It. And Francine, I have to tell you, this is what we do here. I've read a lot on this topic. It's dear to my heart. I started again after 50. This whole channel started because of my experiences. And that's exactly what you did with the book. It's based on what went through. And I have to say, it's one of the most comprehensive books I've read on this topic. I mean, I absolutely love it and recommend it highly. And I want to start just by giving our audience a little taste of where did you come from? How did you get to write this book?
Oh, so you want me to give them a little taste? You got it. Okay. Well, I came through sad experiences. I was married when I was young. I was widowed just before I was 50. And I met my wonderful second husband and married him 10 years from the death of my first husband. I married my second husband, Chris. And it was in those 10 years between my two marriages that I made all the mistakes a person can make. I shot myself in the foot. I picked the wrong partners. I was too needy and desperate. You name it, I did it. I stayed in relationships too long. I was in the wrong kinds of relationships. And then bit by bit, I got better.
Yeah.
And by the time I met Chris, I was so ready. I had learned so much. And we had a wonderful, wonderful marriage. The only thing is, it was too short. He died of lung cancer, just a few short years after we were married. And I spent a few years just mourning intensely and also taking care of the kids, his and mine. And then when I was ready to date again, which it didn't take me 10 years because I had learned all the stuff I put in the book. I knew how to do it. I had a bunch of first dates, maybe 15, which I think is not a big deal. And then I started dating somebody for a few weeks. And when I found out that he was very honest. He said, well, listen, I'd really love to go to bed with you, but I've been dating this other woman for 6 months and I have special feelings for her. Basically, will you be my back burner babe? And I said, no, thank you. No, thank you. I don't know if that's a country song or not, but it should be.
It should be.
And then I met my current partner, Michael, with whom I just celebrated our 6-year anniversary. And, there were some things about Michael that gave me pause. But on the whole, emotionally, we connected. We really connected. And we were able to work everything out. I would say the first year had a couple of rocky moments, but I learned to deal with who he was and he learned to deal with who I am. And we are very happy together. And now I'm 75, he's 79. And we are doing wonderfully and we are so happy.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. And see, I love that. You've just now addressed a big part of really what our viewers, a lot of people here are struggling with, which is just having hope that this is even possible. I mean, if anybody would lose hope or just be like, I'm sick of this, you not only have been widowed once, you were widowed twice.
Yes.
And you went through the online dating experience through all that and managed to bring a good attitude and make it work. So again, the premise from which we're talking is just I love it. And to give our viewers a little insight into the book, again, get this book. If you are want to find love after 50, creating love after 50, this is such a comprehensive guide. You have it divided into 3 sections. And I'd like to touch maybe on the highlights of each. The first one, obviously, is to prepare yourself. You talk about doing, the head work. We talk a lot about that. I kind of get that. But you brought up, there's a big part of it where you say identify the emotional traits of your partner. What do you mean by that? Let's talk about that.
Okay, there's just one thing I want to say to your viewers, which is that this book is not just about my experience. I interviewed scores and scores of people who eventually found happy relationships. So if that doesn't give you, and they made a lot of the same mistakes I made and you probably make. So if that doesn't give you hope, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
And many of them learned from their experiences about what they needed in a partner. So I think about this woman, Dorothy. She was 70 when she met her second husband, and she'd had a lot of unhappy relationships. And she said in each of them, I wasn't happy about who I was, and I felt like I wasn't a real equal. So she was looking for somebody who would treat her as an equal and who would encourage her to grow as a person. And she found that person. Now, other people have perhaps one marriage or several relationships, and I would say make a list. Make a list of the 2 or 3 most important relationships in your life, what you valued in them, and what you don't want to have ever again. And people are pretty clear about what they don't want again. I don't want a cheater. Mm-hmm. I don't want a narcissist. I don't want somebody who's emotionally aloof and can't be present for me emotionally. Well, I say get a piece of paper, draw a line down the center. On the left side, put all those negative things that you never want again. And on the right side, put the positive version of that. So that if your ex was a cheater, I'm looking for somebody trustworthy. Mm-hmm. If your partner was emotionally unstable, I'm looking for somebody who's really steady as a rock that I can count on. If your partner was emotionally unavailable, I'm looking for somebody affectionate who will share his feelings with me. And you should come up with a list of maybe 5 important traits, but maybe 3 of the most important. And as you begin to date, and especially as you begin to have a relationship, look at that list and ask whether this person has those traits. Is this the person you can count on? Is this person sharing his feelings with you? Or is this the same old pattern I've been in before, where I'm turned on by this guy's unavailability, and this leads down a path that I don't want to go?
Right, exactly. Well, and yes, you have just great exercises in there. And again, I've seen a lot of the exercises. You give almost a blueprint to how to do this, and it makes a lot of sense. In the second section, it's about starting to date. And, again, you go into how to online date, and we have tons of that. I agree with everything you said in there. The thing, again, that I think is very important, I wanted to get your personal perspective, is dating as a realist and navigating the emotional currents of dating. I think that's where so many of us, get by the wayside. Okay, well, here's reality. And at the other end of the spectrum over here is this man that I've had 3 emails with is gonna be the one. That's fantasy. On the other side is
no one will ever date somebody like me. He's too good for me. You know, he'll take one look at me and we'll never connect. I'll never find anybody. There's nobody good out there. All the good ones are taken. I'm too old, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of those attitudes. Now, I have met a ton of people who have met after 50, and I've seen zillions of their stories in newspapers or photographs, and they are not all thin and gorgeous and better than you in every way. No way. Now, sometimes somebody who's got a few pounds they wish they could lose pairs up with somebody who's also got a few pounds they wish they could lose. Somebody who's, you know, you might, the one person might be very attractive, the woman might be great looking, and the guy's kind of balding and has a paunch, but they connect emotionally. So it depends. If you be a realist, look for a real person, a person who makes you laugh, a person you can talk with and you want to keep talking to. That's what it's about. It's about the emotional connection.
Yeah. And we get hung up on looks or, well, like you said, on feeling, bringing negative thoughts to the, well, you know, to the table. And then, you know, we do tend to create what we focus on. And that's, I mean, I see it in our comments all the time, the negative beliefs. You just want to go this is what you need to snap out of. And you explain this in a very, very candid, very open, and very real way. So, you know, thank you for that.
Of course, I have a favorite story about somebody who was very negative. Mm-hmm. Her name is Candice in the book. And she wanted dating to be really fast. Yes or no? And this guy called her and she was annoyed because, first of all, she didn't want to have a phone call and he insisted. She liked to just okay, text, email, cup of coffee, yes or no. This guy, he wanted to have a phone call and he wanted to insist that he didn't want to do coffee. He wanted to take her out to dinner. So somehow she agreed. And then right before the date, she's thinking, I'm going to cancel this date. I'm going to cancel this date. There are 3 things that are wrong with him. So he has 3 strikes against him. Strike 1, he has a terrible New York accent. Strike 2, he's in insurance. Boring. Strike 3, his kids don't go to the fancy private schools that my kids go to. But somehow she got herself on the date, and as soon as he stood up, she saw something in his hand. She'd written in her profile that she was a chocoholic and she didn't plan to change. And in his hand, he was holding a box of deluxe chocolates. Yeah. And he was a lot cuter than his picture, which, by the way, a lot of guys are. A lot of guys. So from then on, he was a yes. She got used to his accent. It turned out he was a really fascinating guy. He wasn't only interested in insurance, and they've been together ever since. Yeah. So, you know, give the person a chance. Don't stereotype them. Even if it's just a cup of coffee, be open to that person. Find out who they are.
Yeah, because you never know what's underneath. That I love that story. That was really a fun story. I could just almost see it. And you have lots of other stories like that, again, which is why your book is so relatable. The emotional currents, that's another big one, is the rejection that you're going to encounter, and you're going to encounter more of it than in real life dating because, well, you're going to meet more people. Let's briefly touch on that.
I think that you have to redefine rejection. I call it rejection. Now, in online, there are a zillion people dating a zillion other people. And so you've got to assume that if you have a first date with somebody and you don't have a second date, that there could be zillions of reasons for that, having nothing to do with something being wrong with you. And I have an exercise I love, another piece of paper, write down up to 10 reasons, 15 if you like, that this person might not have wanted to have a second date with you or call you back or answer your email or whatever it is. all having nothing to do with something wrong with you. One, he was dating another woman for like several months and they decided to be exclusive. Two, his kids are having a crisis and he can't think about dating. Three, you were warm and friendly and everything you should have been on that date, but this guy is only sexually aroused by somebody who's cool and aloof and a little mean. And believe me, there are plenty of there's a lot of messed up chemistry out there. Or this person has met 50 people as nice as you or even nicer and doesn't connect with anybody. Or that cough blossomed into pneumonia and he's dead. Yeah. Hey, it's your list. Anything, you can put anything you want on it.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest takeaway there is yes, it's probably not you, but even if it is, if you just know to expect it, I think that it might be easier to deal with. And we could say that in many different ways. But I know hearing that and having that reinforced that you're not the only one that's being rejected. This is part of online dating.
I don't even like to use the word rejection.
Okay.
Because you either connect or you don't connect. And maybe chemistry is mysterious. I've talked to people, they had a date and they were both like the oldest sibling in a family. And when they started talking about their families and what it was like to be the oldest in a big family, they really started connecting. And it didn't matter that, her hair was gray and she didn't color it, or that she had a few extra pounds, or that he was balding. None of that mattered. They just had a wonderful time together. And that kind of connection is really hard to find.
Yeah.
And so I would say expect to have a lot of first dates.
Good point. Yeah, reframing it. That's a great point. I love it. Then the third section, create a relationship to cherish and make it work. And again, excellent points you have in there that you talk about rediscovering sex, dealing with kids, big adult kids or hostile kids, also a big thing. I don't want to get into those details. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this segment. But I think, again, what I think that really struck me, the way you put it, is testing a relationship, or like trying it out, test driving it. What did you mean by that?
I mean that I had a therapist who told me that when we get older, we get much better at catch and release. I guess he was a fisherman. Anyway, I think it's true. I think we find out very quickly in the first couple of months, certainly within the first 6 months, probably in the first 2 to 3 months, whether this is something that we want to be in for the rest of our lives. And so I was with a guy who was very weird, and there were many wonderful things about him. He was warm and he was charming, but he had this sexual weirdness about him. And I had the feeling that, and he called, he kept calling me dear, even though I didn't like that because that's what my mother called my father called my mother. And I had the feeling like every woman was identical. And I was just one of many. And I just thought there's something about this is not right. And I broke it off. And by the way, I have some advice for breaking it off. It's much kinder to break it off and make a clean break than to say, oh, let's be friends.
Yeah, we can.
Because sometimes the guy will say, well, could we be friends? And I'll say, well, that's never worked for me. No. I'm sorry.
Well, and it doesn't. It's just a way to try to let somebody down easier, but you don't mean it. You don't want to be friends. I mean, that's very rarely can you make something like that work. No, I agree. Before we close out, Francine, I wanted to ask you, what could you share with the audience? What do you think was like one of your biggest mistakes, maybe a recurrent mistake that you learned the most from that people could relate to?
Well, two things. One, I was too needy and I expected too much. I expected my partner to fulfill too many of my emotional needs. And that tended to drive people away. The other thing is I tended to pick men less and less as I learned who were a little bit emotionally unavailable, because to me that aroused passion and I wanted passion. And as I did this, I began to see when early on when the person was not really capable of the kind of intimacy that I wanted. And I began to value that kind of intimacy more. And when I found it, that's what I focused on.
Yeah. I remember you saying that in the book. It's interesting you bring that up because I can relate to that so much as well. Francine, I just loved talking with you. I mean, there's so much more that we can go into, and maybe you can come back and let's
Hey,
talk about some of
I'm
these points.
there. I'm there.
Yeah, some of these points in more detail. In the meantime, again, I will, I'll link to your book, Love After 50. I got lots of notes here myself that I want to explore in more detail. Again, we'll link to all of your information to your website. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon on Second Act TV.
It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. And if there's a topic that you'd like to have us cover, visit our website, secondact.tv. We have a little red suggestion box in the upper right-hand corner of our site. Just click on that, drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.